All right, this is for day 12, page 47 and 48. Again, if you have the homework book, you can do it on there, but if not, you can just do it on the package you got. Page 47 and page 48 look like this. This is page 47, and this is page 48. So let's go ahead and start with page 47, problem number 1. Now this one says Jamil traveled 210 miles. Jamil traveled 210 miles. So let's write that real quick. 210 miles, which is 70% of the total distance to his grandfather's house, which is 70% to his grandfather's house. How many more, okay, how many more miles does he need to travel to reach his grandfather's house? Now, whenever we see how many more, remember we need to subtract, but that's going to be at the end. We're going to find that at the end. Right now, let's do this. Let's figure out what this problem is saying. Jamil traveled 210 miles, which is 70%. So if he was traveling, like let's say if this is 100%, he only traveled up to 70% over here. So he still needs. So he only traveled this much to 70%, and now he still needs to travel this much to his grandparents' house. Now, whenever we have a part and we need to figure out how much the total is from part 70 to 100%, we need to make this into 100%. But we can't because 70 times something doesn't give us 100% right now. I mean, with decimals they do, but we're not going to get into that yet. But anyway, we can't get from 70 to 100. So we can do my trick, the one that we do by when I say multiply this times something to get 100%. So what would it be? So we can't do that trick right now. So let's try doing the other trick or the other strategy, I guess, which is making this 70% into 10%. So how do we make 70 into 10%? We need to divide. But what do we divide by? 70, that 7 is that little clue. We divide it by 7. Remember, if you can't divide this in your head, do it backwards. 10 times 7 equals 70. Anyway, we're going to divide by 7 on this side as well, because whatever we do on one side, we must do to the other side. So over here, if you don't know how to do 210 divided by 7, then do 21 divided by 7. If you can't do 21 divided by 7, 7 times what equals 21? 7 times 3 equals 21. Then we just add the 0. But that would be miles. 30 miles is 10%. Now that we have this, now I can make this 100%. Now I can make the 10% 100%. And I'm trying to figure out the 100% so I know how far his grandfather's house is. Because he only walked 70%, which is 210 miles. So once I find the 100%, I'll know how many miles his grandfather's house is. How far is it? But now, how do we make 10 into 100? We multiply by 10. But we must do that to both sides. So on this side, 30 times 10, if you can't do this in your head, do 30 times 1. 30 times 1 is 30. Then we add the 0 that we didn't multiply. So that means that 300 miles is 100%, which is 300 miles is how far his grandfather's house is. Now it says, how many more miles does he need to travel to reach his grandfather's house? So for this one, see how it says how many more? You need to subtract. So you need to subtract how far his grandfather's house is. So his grandfather's house. And subtract that by how much 70% is. How many miles is 70%? This is how much he walked. So you're taking away how much Jamil traveled. I don't want to give you the numbers, but they are here already. So how far the grandfather's house minus how much the Jamil traveled, that will give you your answer for number 1. Now let's go to number 2. Oh wait, we haven't finished number 1. It says Kate chose B as the correct answer. How did she get that answer? Which is 147. How did she get 147? 147 is less than 210. which is our original ratio. So let's do it with yellow because this is the other part. So this 210 miles was 70%. They gave us that in the beginning. She got an answer that was less than 210, which was 147. That means she must have multiplied this percentage or something. I'm pretty sure she did 210 times 0.70. So let's see what the calculator says. So 210 times 0.70. 147. Yeah, so she multiplied these two numbers, the ratio of miles and the percentage. She didn't try to figure out what 10% was and then change to 100%. She just tried to multiply these two numbers because she saw them in a problem. Or Jamil or Kate did that. A lot of you guys do that too. Next time, make sure you read the problem to make sure you're not doing that, because a lot of you will look at these two numbers and just multiply them out. You have to see what they're asking you. You have to look for the words here. How many more miles? That already told me that there was going to be two steps to this problem. The final one, which is subtracting, but this are showing our work. That's something that you can't do when you just multiply them together. But let's continue to number 2. I know I'm getting a little confusing. Let's go to number 2. Let me move this real quick. Oh man. All right. I'll just make a new one. Today's day 12. Let's do problem. This is problem number 1. All right. So for this one, number 2, Brandon plowed. Brandon plowed snow for 84 driveways in 7 days. Sorry about that. He plowed the same number of driveways each day. Tell whether each statement is true or false. All right, before we find out if each statement is true or false, let's take the ratio, write it down first. So 84 driveways to 7 days. Obviously, if he says let's look at it. It says the rate is 84 driveways to 1 day, 84 driveways to 7 days. No, that wouldn't be true. The unit rate for driveways per day is 12. Now, unit rate means how much is 1. But this unit rate here is asking us per day. So let's figure out this unit. Let's create this unit into a 1-day unit. A 1-day unit. So how do we get from 7 to 1? What do we divide the 7 by? We divide it by 7. That means we need to do that to both sides. Now, right here, 7 times 12, 7 times 7 is 77. 7 times 12 at 7 more, 84. So it would be 12 driveways. Driveways. So the unit rate for driveways per day is 12. So per day is 12 driveways. That would be correct. Let's try looking at C. The rate in unit fraction form is 12 to 1. So if I made this ratio right here into a fraction, the first number always goes on top and the second number goes on the bottom. The rate in fraction form is this. So this rate in fraction form would be this. That would be true for part C. Now let's look at the last one, part D. If Brandon continues at the same rate, he will plow 120 driveways in 12 days. So we need to take this rate, the one that says how much is in 1 day, and we're going to multiply. We're going to multiply to get 12 days. We only have 1 day, and we need to get 12 days. So we're going to multiply 1 day times 12 to get 12 days. But we need to do this to both sides. So when I do 12 times 12 on this side, I get 144 driveways. 120 driveways per 12 days. So that won't be true as well. So this one's for part number 2. Let's save it real quick. Thanks. Let's go to number 3. A meteorologist said that it rained during 20% of the past 60 days. On how many days did it not rain? Okay, so the question tells us that this guy said 20% of the 60 days it rained. But the question says how many days did it not rain? That right there tells me it's going to be like a subtraction problem. Because I need to figure out how many days it rained, which is 20%, and it's going to be less than 60. 20% is less than 100%. So that means that my answer is going to be less than 60 days. Now, before we figure out the question, let's just figure out how many days 20% is. So how many days it rained. For this one, we can actually just multiply, which is 60 days times the 20%. And when we do that, we get 12. Now that means that 20% of 60 days is 12. That means 12 days it rained. So on how many days did it not rain? So in the past 60 days, 12 days was 20% of how many days it rained. So when I subtract, it's going to tell me how many days did it not rain. Let's go to number 4. That was kind of easy. At tryouts for the school talent show, 60% of the 30 performers played a musical instrument. 60% of the 30 performers, so less than 30 played an instrument. How many performers played a musical instrument? Okay, I know it has a model, so like 60% would be right here. So you would have to count 3, 3, plus 3, plus 3, plus 3, plus 3 all the way here. So make sure you add that and you click the correct performer. I'm not going to do that one, but if I did it my way, it would be the performers times the percentage. And then this would give me what the answer would be. So this also works for number 4. Now let's look at number 5. Students collected 600 cans for the canned food drive. That was 80% of their goal. How many more, how many more cans do they need to collect to reach their goal? So it tells us here that this was 80% of their goal, 600 cans. That means that 100% would be more than 600 cans. So more than 600 cans is their original goal. But the question is not asking us to give us that number. It's asking us how many more cans do they still need to reach their goal. So we need to do 2 parts. The how many more parts, that part is going to be subtraction. This part right here, we need to make this to 100% first. So we're going to do our trick. So let's go ahead and save this real quick. So 600 cans to 80%. And we want this to get to 100% because then we'll know what's your goal. 600 cans is only 80% of their goal. 100% will tell us what their whole can goal is. But I can't do 80 times something to get 100. So I need to do my strategy of creating this into a 10%. So how do I make an 80 into a 10? How do I divide it? If you can't do that, 10 times 8 gives me 80, and it works backwards. 80 divided by 8 is 10. So I need to do this to both sides. Now for this side, I'm not sure if it's going to work out, but let's go ahead and just divide it real quick. 7, 6, 48, 756, 40 left over, 5. So it's going to be 75 cans. Let me make sure this is correct because last time I didn't do it correctly and I messed up on the video. Where are you? There you are. So 600 divided by 8, 75. Yes. All right, cool. So it is 75. Now, that means now we have 10%. We want to get to 100%. We want to get to 100%. So how do we get from 10 to 100? What do we multiply 10 by? We multiply it by 10. And whatever we do on one side, we must do to the other side. Right here, we can do this by, we put the 75 down, and then we add 1 0, and that's our answer. So that means that 750 cans was their 100%, their original goal. Their original goal. Now, what is the question asking us? How many more cans do they need to collect to reach their goal? They collected 600, but their goal is 750. So you must subtract so you can find out how many more cans they have to reach their goal. All right, let's look at number 6. Whoa, this one's a little bit tricky, I think. Megan correctly spelled 45 out of the 50 words in a spelling competition. Justin spelled 27 out of the 30 words correctly. Fernando spelled 84 out of the 120 words correctly. Which statements are true? Select all that apply. So that means there's probably more than one. Fernando spelled the greatest percentage of words correctly. Okay. Megan and Justin spelled the same percentage of words correctly. Okay. Justin spelled the least percent of words correctly. Okay. The percent of words that Megan spelled correctly is greater than the percentage of words of Fernando spelled correctly. So it looks like they're asking you a lot of percentage questions. So what you must do is you need to create a list for like Megan, not a list, but just lay it out. So Justin, just so you can see it. It's better when you can see it. Fernando. So Megan, oh, okay, Megan did 45 out of 50. 45 out of 50. But whenever we talk about words or like shots or things like this, we can write them in fraction, 45 to 50. Now, let's see. Justin, 27 out of 30. So 27 out of 30. And then Fernando, 84 out of 120. Now, to make these into percentages, we must divide the top number on top by the number in the bottom. So we're going to do 84 divided by 120. And we get 7.7. 0.7 means 0.70, which means 70%. Now, let's look at Justin, 27 over 30, 27 to 30 shots. I mean, words spelled correctly. So it's going to be 27 divided by 30. It should give us 90. It should give us 0.9, which means 0.9 means 0.90, which means 90%. Now let's look at our last one, 45 over 50. 45 divided by 50. That gives us 0.90, which means 0.90, which means 90%. Now you have the answers for each person. What you must check is check A through D and see which of these statements are correct. So some of these statements said like this person has the same cheating percent, the same spelling correct. I'm sorry, this person has the same percentage as this person has a higher percentage than this person has the highest percentage. So I want you to read A through D and just pick the correct answer that you think is right. I did most of the work for you here. Just make sure you pick the correct ones here. And make sure you show your work like this somewhere on this page so I can see it, please. But yeah, this is it for day 12. If you're watching this, I'm doing a Zoom video thing later on if you want to join. Just check Google Classroom.